yard, left center field, but it's going to be... Oh, he didn't hold on. And Bibbie had a drop on him, and that is going to score 2, and the Mud Hens tie the game. And now the ball gets away from the home plate area, and on to third base goes Malloy.
This is what happens when I'm too focused on something and I forgot to I just didn't get a chance to put the fresh videos in for the intro this week. So welcome to another episode, week 6 of the Tiger Malloy Report recap here at TigerMLReport.com. I'm Rogelio Castillo, alongside Chris Brown. And for some of you, I wasn't here Thursday because softball's been, I keep telling everybody, yeah, I'll call in, but it's bad audio and I don't want to ruin the audio experience. And so I've been doing some video segments. So this is nice to kind of catch up. We'll talk a little bit of the Tigers, of course, too, as they did take a game over Seattle and they opened up a 2-game series, strange 2-game series with the Pirates starting on Tuesday, and plenty to get to though, too, across the minor league system. Welcome everybody who's watching us on YouTube. Thank you so much, Stan. Good to see you, Alex, and Sir Justy. And we got a chance to go to West Michigan last night. We'll talk about what we saw there. And also, Justyn-Henry Malloy breaks out of a slump in a big way. He had a big week. So there's plenty of that going on. Chris, how was your Sunday? How was your Mother's Day?
It was really good. Thank you. We went to we had a brunch with both my mother and my father and my mother-in-law and my wife. And it was nice. It was we hung out for a bunch, then we came home and relaxed. And I watched a bunch of baseball. I watched the Tigers come back and win, which was nice to see after a rough first couple games in the series. And is on the whole, it was a solid week in the minors too. So we were watching a bunch of games like that, and just a good weekend. I hope everybody who still has their mother was still able to enjoy Mother's Day, and those of us, or those of you who do not, were able to remember her in a way that was calming and happy for you, and not a bummer.
Yeah, and there was it was great. The way I honored my mom was I made chunky beef burritos, and my mom made a lot of different things, but the reason why I did that is because first and foremost, those are pretty simple to make, but I really wanted just a giant thing of food, so I had a burrito. But my mother, I think she had 3 signature dishes. She had yellow rice and chicken, or arroz con pollo, frijoles, black beans and rice. She made it a certain way that was really good, and she made that with the shredded Cuban pork. And then her third dish was spaghetti. Now I know it sounds like spaghetti seems like a simple thing. For whatever reason, though, I've never had spaghetti like this, nor since. Somehow she made it dry. Like she made the sauce mixed in there to the point where I always saw spaghetti on commercials where the sauce was on top of the noodles, but my mom mixed it in there with the noodles already and with the meat. And my son explained it to me. He's like, "Dad, it's like dry spaghetti." And I thought about it, and it's just, that's how she did it. And that was one of her signature dishes. So, but
literally mom spaghetti.
Yeah, mom spaghetti. Although, it's not as of a cool story as M&M, but nevertheless,
it's still nice. Yeah.
Yeah. She like after a while she got fancier and made it with bread and all that jazz. So, but anywho, on to the show. But the Tigers win today. Come back from behind. That was a really nice win, especially because Seattle was just mystifying them the entire week, and they definitely needed it. They're just in terms of just overall, just the offense came to a grinding halt. And one of the things I liked about the series too was the at bat today from Akil Baddoo getting that double. Zach McKenzie starting things off, and he continues to do well. Then there was a headline in MLB, Nick Maton was, and then it's just like, you're like, you look at the numbers, but then you see stuff going on in Toledo. You're like, okay, well, the Justyn-Henry Malloy call him up banter, if you will, was quiet until this weekend. And by the way, I want to thank everybody who donated to the GoFundMe too. So thank you again for everybody who did that, and anybody who's joined the Patreon. And of course, if you want to participate in our super chats,
exquisite,
you can go ahead and do so. But because yesterday you made that trip possible to West Michigan. So, but yeah, Justyn-Henry Malloy this week decided to break out of a slump and just went ham crazy, Chris. And let's go start with the stats here. 9 for 22. And he wasn't the best in the system. We'll get to who was the best in the system.
Yeah.
Justyn-Henry Malloy, 9 for 22, 3 home runs, and 6 RBIs, and batted a pretty impressive slash line. And Stan, he has a knee injury, by the way, just as it had the Brian Kreidler knee injury. He was inquiring if who had a knee, what was going on with Kreidler.
As far as we know, though, I think it's just like a knee bruise. It's not like a torn ligament or anything like that. It's but it sounds like it was pretty bad. If he's, haven't heard much from him in a while, so.
Yeah, we haven't, in terms of even from an update standpoint, too, no one down in Detroit has said anything. So it's been pretty quiet down there when it comes to that. But no, Justyn-Henry Malloy, as soon as he hit that home run today, and I was looking at what Nick Maton was doing, I was like, oh boy, here we go. And you knew it was going to, the call up chants were going to get louder and louder and louder. And after teams kind of figured out Malloy, and look, I will say this, the Cubs, the Iowa Cubs had some really good pitchers. There were some, oh man, I think it was, I want to say Thursday or Friday. They took a guy on. I think it was, maybe it was Friday when they got blown out 10-2, or maybe it was, I can't remember exactly what it was. I'm trying to find his name, but the guy who came in with like ERA of like 0.95 or something like that. Just Brown. He's the same as you.
Ben Brown. Ben Brown.
Yeah,
he came to them and traded with the Phillies last year. And he was throwing, mid to upper 90s all game with a couple nasty hooks. They have some interesting arms down there, and that was the thing. Like today's game was Kyle Hendricks. And so was Mondays, I believe, right? Or Tuesdays, I should say.
Yeah, and Hendricks, his velocity's down, by the way. He was at 86, 87 a whole game too. He wasn't really throwing really hard.
Well, he's always been like, I don't know the last time he like sat around 90. He's always been that super rare, like plus control command righty who doesn't throw very hard. He's got to change it. But Malloy got him for the home run today. I don't know if he got him on Tuesday as well. I don't think so. But they got to him a little bit, and the pitching stepped up a little bit today. It was the Mud Hens were on a 9-game losing streak. They lost the first games of this four games of this series. It was brutal. And they finally, came back to win the last 2, which helps you salvage a little bit of the, credibility. But they were, I think, 19-8, and are now 20-18 or something like that. It was. Oof.
Yeah, there was that home run on a 79-mile-an-hour something that didn't do anything, didn't break or do anything, just sat there and spin up there. But yeah, he definitely had a good week, and one of the things too that stood out to me was, in terms of speaking of had a good week, was Austin Bergner. He just appeared in one game, came in and struck out 8, which is highly unusual. I mean, maybe again because the Cubs haven't seen him before, but 8 strikeouts. Bergner's not a strikeout pitcher by no stretch of the imagination.
Well, yeah, it was interesting. So they brought him. They just sent him up from Erie. He made it up to Toledo at the end of last year, and then he started back in Erie this year. And he struggled in Toledo a ton. And he came out of the bullpen, and I want to say he struck out 5 of the first 6 batters he faced. And it's 89-91 with his fastball, but his curveball, his slider, and his changeup were all just absolutely giving Cubs hitters fits. They couldn't handle any of them. It was kind of hilarious. I was cutting it up just because it's kind of fun to watch. But that was a promising thing. There was a period last year we was kind of doing that stuff in Erie, and we thought, hey, this guy might have something. But yeah, it's so hard when you're not throwing, when you're barely cracking 90 miles an hour, which has always just been a little bit mystifying because that's not who he was in college. But the secondary stuff is there. It's legit, and he had all three of his secondary pitches working, and that's why he was getting so many swings and misses. He must have had 15 swings and misses in the 4 innings, maybe more. It was wild. So that was good to see. But yeah, I mean, it was a two start week for Reese Olson, and it's just kind of more of the same with him. He actually did pitch better today, but it still was how many innings did he pitch? 8 innings this week?
Yeah, still in that effect.
So eight innings and 2 starts, and it was 12 hits, 5 earned runs, 8 walks, and 7 strikeouts. It's not really working for him as a starter. I think, you keep getting him in the innings because he needs the innings, but I think we all know this is headed to the bullpen eventually.
Yeah, there's, one of the things too about Berdner is that we saw him start. I mean, like we mentioned earlier, he start, but like his numbers on the surface, outside of having one bad appearance against Bowie, he's been in. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, I take that back. He had the second appearance against Portland where he walked 5. 29 strikeouts in 22 innings of work. The walks is where he didn't. I don't remember him walking as much as he did last year. So maybe it's just like a touch and feel kind of thing. So getting back to the Tigers for a moment, as my wife is hysterically laughing. You do realize everybody can hear you, right? I should close the door.
Was it Instagram? What's going on?
She TikTok. She's that's her thing, TikTok. But no. So getting back to the Tigers real quick, because there's a couple questions on how long Scope is on this team, and I think that's a legitimate question to the point where we just can't ignore it anymore. Probably by the end of the month, I would just assume, based off his numbers. And one of the things I wanted to talk about too was Saturday's start by Alex Faedo, who I wrote an article about him last week on the minor league site, because it was looking at some of the numbers a little bit in his swing and miss stuff, which has been there. And he started kind of figuring things out towards the end of his time in Toledo, and he came up and had a quality start. He pitched really good on Saturday and gave the Tigers exactly what they needed. I think he had the best start of the weekend too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Boyd was awful. And so was, Wentz didn't get out of the 3rd inning, right?
Yeah. He didn't. Yeah. And another thing too about the weekend too that I wanted to talk about, because I wasn't here on Thursday before we get back into Toledo, I wanted to ask a question about the Spencer Turnbull situation, because that whole thing. So being in the clubhouse, I admittedly have not been down a game in about a couple of weeks just because of personal stuff that's going on, but I'm going to get down there for the Pirates series and not miss the series for the rest of the year. So that's my goal. But one of the things about Turnbull is that he talks to the media, says his thing, and kind of quiet and does his thing, whatever. And thank you, Stan.
Exquisite.
That ball is gone. Such a all-time.
Stan. Thank you, Stan. But yeah, there's I think that one of the things about this whole situation is that it wasn't, people are saying, well, it's a manipulation of service time or anything. I think personally, he was pissed he got sent down to Toledo. And as Jason Beck pointed out, I believe on Twitter, that the injury started when he almost got that comeback, or a stinger, if you will, against Boston. And then he went out and hired Scott Boras. Now, people are just like, well, he's going to try to get as much money as he can. Well, of course. I mean, that's what he's going to do. I mean, he is 30, which is strange to think that I keep thinking like he's younger, but he's not. I know he's not. But that whole situation was bizarre, Chris. I mean, I just think that it was a sense of pride, perhaps a little bit of mismanagement by the Tigers. I don't know. I just know that's enough to know that it was just, the whole situation just seemed awkward.
Yeah, I mean, it's the timing is certainly fishy of him changing agents and getting an IL stint instead of a trip to the minors. But it does sound like it was at least they found a specialist who would confirm that, yes, his neck is hurt. But yeah, I mean, I think professional athletes are competitors. They certainly don't want to get sent down. Like, I was just going to say, maybe that's part of, we talked about before, part of what's going on with some of these guys in Erie who were in Erie all last year, or even made it up to Toledo, like Bergner, and then are back down until Erie to start the year. It's got to be tough to deal with that when you've kind of reached, gotten so close, and then now you're taking a step back. But yeah, I mean, I think Turnbull, I don't think the Tigers cared one bit about his service time. I don't think they're trying to manipulate his service time. It just so happens that if by sending him down, it would have affected his service time. And I think it's his right to protest that and not want to lose that, because you're talking about potentially millions of dollars. We've seen Turnbull, when he's at his best, is a pretty good big league pitcher. He's just rarely been at his best. He was basically like a handful of starts there in 2021. They wanted him down. Harris said they wanted him to go down and work on some stuff. In the major leagues, he said big league baseball or major leagues is not a good place to work on things. And so they figured out a way to make it so he'll get his 3 or 4 rehab starts in that he was going to get anyway. But now it's as a rehab outing, so it doesn't affect his service time, and they can hopefully get things worked out and get him back up in the rotation. But yeah, I don't know. I think basically he was probably blindsided by it, and that's what led to everything else that happened. He probably was complaining and all that stuff, and then finally admitted that, like, hey, my neck hurts a little bit. Maybe that's why. And Boris came out and said, yeah, you can tell he's hurt. He doesn't give up home runs. And it's like, well, I mean, that is kind of true. He's only given up 2 home runs in a game once before, but that might also be disconvenient. But
I think that's more convenient, because I think that if you look at Turnbull's stuff, a lot of his stuff has been middle zone. It hasn't had the slider at times. It started getting better in the last couple starts, but overall, I think he was still figuring things out. After surgery, it's going to take some time, of course. And so I wasn't expecting, Turnbull to be perhaps what he was until probably middle of this month, towards the beginning of June. But the last couple starts have been bad. And when he went down to Toledo, I wasn't surprised. I was actually, somewhat surprised, because again, we're not used to, the team just kind of going, you're gone, and being so quick about it. And no, and Connor's right. There's guys who, he was saying in the chat, one of those things that a player thinks he can play through. Scherzer has been dealing with neck issues for years now. And
yeah, because Stan was saying Turnbull in effect lied to the Tigers about his injury, putting himself over the team. That's not him. Like, I care about these are competitors. They want to play. They want to. These guys. Just think of any man who doesn't want to go to the doctor, right? Like I know I'm fine. I'll got it out. I'm good. It's like that. And I don't think. I mean, he clearly has service time on his mind, but I don't think he was like, hey, screw the team. I need to get my innings in. I think it was like, I'm good. I belong up here. You shouldn't send me down. But yeah, like you're saying, Connor was saying, yeah, that players do this all the time. Players they play hurt all the time.
Right.
And that's the thing. Like, I bet you 20 of the guys in the Tigers right now could legitimately go on the injured list with something. Like, I got a deep thigh bruise. AJ Hinch could probably go on the injured list. You saw the other day, it looked like he had a big old raspberry on his forehead. We couldn't figure out what happened there. It's baseball. You're playing with sticks and balls, and people get hurt and you get run into it, all that stuff. So, I don't know. Yeah, it was a strange situation, but I don't know. People are like, hey, is Turnbull ever going to pitch for the Tigers again? Like, I think so. I think it's in both parties' interests for him to come up and pitch well with the Tigers. And then perhaps if he does that around the trade deadline, maybe they can work something out. But I don't think you trade him now, you're going to get pennies on the dollar basically for what he could potentially be worth if he's at his best. But I don't know.
Yeah, speaking of his best too, there's I'm not sure if anybody's seen what Connor was talking about. Somebody put it in our YouTube chat here, and I'll link it on the episode description too. So during Evan Pitzold of the Freep asked Akil Baddoo a question about what was his mindset like when he hit that double. And
yeah, what was going through your head when you hit that double? And
he's like, next question, and just gave him a weird look. And it's a question that Evan asks all the time too. It's a common thing that you hear in there all the time, and so
yeah,
it was weird.
It's an open-ended question. It's kind of a nothing question, right? You want him to say, want him to say, oh man, I was looking for this and I hit it there, and I was thinking maybe I should go to second, and you just want to get a little quote, and it's easier than saying, you don't want to say a yes or no question, because then you'll get a yes or no. But the media around these guys every day, right? For the most part. And not everybody always gets along all the time, or somebody might say something or do something, or be near somebody who says something, and you might have a little friction there. It happens all the time between media and athletes. I remember I've interviewed Kristen Stewart a couple times long ago in the minors, and I think at one point I tweeted out that he was a bad defender. And Kristen Stewart is one of the few people on Twitter who has blocked me, and I could never figure out why. And it's like, oh, it's probably because I said he was a bad defender, and he doesn't want to deal with it, and that's his right. So I don't know. I mean, it adds a little intrigue, but I don't think it really means anything.
It's just, I think it's just maybe just it's where, and we're not. I mean, we obviously can't play the audio of it because I can't play the audio through here. But look at, it's just where he looks at him like they're like, yeah, what's up? Like, next question. Yeah. But to me, I don't know. I don't think it's much of anything. It's just like I said, those guys deal with a lot of that anyway, and so, and Evan's a good reporter, so it was one of those things where.
I'd be shocked if Evan didn't, if they didn't talk about it, or I mean, maybe not today, but at some point they'll figure it out. I remember a long time ago, remember Lynn Henning just like went off on David Price on Twitter, and it was something about, I don't remember what it was. It was David Price like coming out of a game early or something, and Lynn went off on him, and then Lynn, Price talked to him. They talked to each other, and Lynn apologized too. It was sometimes you just have interactions that aren't always pleasant. We used to see videos of those all the time. Remember, like Lou Piniella and Rob Dibble and was it Hal McRae throwing their phone across the coaches or the managers' room?
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember that. That was like what, 92, 93, something like that. I remember that. Yeah, that was. And
I think there's video of like the whole A's trying to fight a reporter or something like it happens. So.
Yeah. No, and again, it is what it is. I just maybe the so far when it comes to questions down there, I'll be honest, I've asked few because I am still kind of not overwhelmed, but still kind of nerve-wracking because I'm trying to think of, you gotta be real quick with those questions. And majority of the time, by the time I think of something, it's usually people have already said what I want to say, or it usually with hints. So it's usually for me, it's kind of thinking of an analytical question. Like, for example, I asked Mason Engler once about him throwing his changeup more versus his slider. But I don't know how it's so weird. Sometimes I just go, do you, like, I sound like Chris Farley. Do you remember the time? Like, I'm still, I don't know. I got to find a way to relax a little more because I'm so like, and I don't know. I'll get better about it. But with the minor leaguers, I don't have that problem. Minor leaguers, I'm fully comfortable with. It's just, I don't know why.
Yeah. I think it's different too, because a lot of times we don't necessarily, and it was different for you for a while because you did have to write or do kind of game recap type things. A lot of times they're just looking for a quote or two from a guy that they can put in their gamer, the quote, and then they complete it. It's the interviews before the games and before batting practice and stuff like that, where we just like to talk to guys about like what they're thinking, why they're doing what they're doing, and it's not necessarily like, how did you feel about this event in this game? Like I don't. Game to game stuff doesn't really matter to me that much. Maybe it will. We talked about this before. Like if the Tigers start winning a ton, we might even do like shows every day.
Right.
If it got to the point where like, hey, we need to discuss the 4 or 5 things that happened in this game, then maybe that matters. But to me, it's more about like the process of these guys getting better and stuff like that. So when you're in a post game scrum or whatever, you're like, how was winning? Or how'd that loss feel? Like, oh well, you know what? It was great. It's just, I don't know. There's not a lot you can learn from those sessions. I don't think, unless you get like the great like Chan Ho Park. I had a lot of diarrhea.
I forgot about that. But that's a good one. No, and even one thing I find interesting about living the minors is when you ask somebody, like, for example, we asked Roberto like Compost or something like that, just a question about environment too, because this is all for them. Sometimes it's a brand new environment. For major leaguers, this is just an everyday occurrence. And so, but like I said, I'm getting there. It's just going to take some time. But overall, that was, again, that maybe at that point, I do want to take a shower and just want to get it over with. Who knows? I don't know. And it's not that, it's not that big of a deal to me, but I mean,
we took a big league detour.
Yeah. And I think it was Cameron on Twitter said something like, you would ask a better question. And you're right. You would probably like, why the question that, I think his reply was something along the lines of, he would have phrased it like this. Let me see here. Cameron said, "I would ask, you've been hitting a lot opposite field doubles to the left field heads. Is that something you're planning to do, or are you taking what's given to you in that situation?" And he says it's basically the same question, but allows Badu to give a non-generic answer if he wants. And he's right. I like the way he phrased that.
Yeah, I mean, it's always tough because you're just, when you're in there, you're trying to come up with a question. Sometimes on the spot. Sometimes you have things you want to ask, and somebody else asks it, and you're like, But one of the things I find myself doing, and it would be like he did in that one, is where you almost answer it for them. So is that something you're planning to do, or was it just this? And they'll just go, yeah, it was just that. And you go, shit, like I shouldn't have said that.
Oh yeah, no,
But,
no, yeah. If they can find a way to answer the question easier, they will.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Yeah,
you're interviewing me, and I'm like, take a shower, and
post
game food, and
yeah, but the spread's no waiting for nobody, man. You got to get there and get that food quick. All right, so getting back into Toledo, like I said, and then Corey Joyce had a really good week too, 5 for 12, hitting nice for 417, and he had I believe a home run too, but it was just
3 extra base hits, I think.
Yeah, and considering
four,
he really
4 extra base hits,
4 extra base hits. Okay, he didn't really do much in Toledo, or excuse me, Erie. So again, it's one of those things where maybe right time, right place against a team like Iowa's got some pretty good pitching prospects too, like we mentioned earlier. But good on Joyce to come up there.
Yeah, well, he had a very brief stint with Toledo last year too, and went absolutely nuts with Toledo last year. I'm looking 7 games. He went 10 for 16 with 2 homers, 5 walks, and 3 strikeouts. And then this time he's 9 games, and he's 8 for 25 with 5 walks and 2 homers, 2 triples, a double. Like, yeah, something about AAA seems to suit him. Maybe it's the better lighting, but yeah, that was good to see. It was a little production there. It's they were sliding partially because nobody was really hitting, and Malloy came back to start hitting this week, and Nevin did a good job, and Joyce was doing well, but you're still seeing a lot of struggles from Parker Meadows and Andre Lipsius, which is, I mean, Meadows was like 4 for 22. Lipsius was like 2 for 22.
Yeah, he was under 100. Yeah.
His swing is all messed up right now, which is unfortunate. He started to strike out. He struck out 7 times to just 2 walks. So he needs to get that figured out. And with Meadows, it's like it feels like he's playing well. He hits the ball hard. It just he faced a tough lefty today and struck out on like 3 pitches. And it's just it's not quite there yet for him. So all of the calls for calling him up aren't terribly loud right now. It's back to Malloy, right? And yeah, I mean, it may not be. We touched on it briefly. May not be a whole lot while longer before Scope gets DFA'd. They could also send Maton down, I suppose, but they're going to need to add a spot on the 40-man. So if they were just going to cut Scope, that would make things easier. But I don't know. It does feel like beginning of June type of move.
Yeah, because I mean, at that point, maybe it's contract related too. Those like little specifics about the contract or when he can waived. But as Joyce win, and Santa asked on our chat, did Joyce win some sort of award in 2022?
He didn't. Not that I know of. I know he didn't win I think who was the offensive player last year? It was Kerry Carpenter, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Carpenter. Yeah.
And then it was Flores the pitcher of the year?
Yeah, Flores was.
Yeah, so unless they give out like organizational gold gloves, which I don't think they do, maybe I don't know. Maybe he won something. I'm not aware of it right now.
Yeah, Olsen. I know Olsen won the Rawlings Gold Glove Award
for pitcher for defense.
All right, so we're getting the Erie. We set up an Erie Yaya Shintuf to the development list, which I thought was interesting. Before I forget, I wanted to go back for a second. I was there when Castro left the game early, and he hadn't pitched since, and so something got tweaked, and so to see him on the IL was a little bit of a delay. But yeah, he did not look good. He pitched, I think it was like the 2 or 3, maybe it was a batter. I don't remember, but I was there with Mike. Tiger Mike over on Twitter, and that was the game he had to leave early. So
yeah, they brought in 3 new pitchers last week. You mentioned Clay, there was Braden Bristow, and there was also Heath Hembry.
Yeah,
and none of them did anything really to stand out, but they're not they're not being shy about adding players at every level. Basically, they feel like they need help.
Yeah, and they added another pitcher too, Tim Daughton. So he was another pitcher they added to, and he went down to Erie. But overall, like I mentioned, Michael Beeline went back to West Michigan. He was an organizational stop all-star in 2022. Wow. Corey Joyce.
I'm going to be honest with you. I did not know that they made their own all-star team.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Well, that's good. Yeah, that's good. Good for him. Yeah,
good pull there, Stan.
Yeah.
And so, but Erie had a good week. They went 5-1. They only lost today to Richmond, and they go back over 500. They're actually in first place. They were in first place, and it's them and Richmond essentially for first place in the Eastern League Southwest. Again, I still think that's a stupid name, and I'll say it again. But in terms of who's had a really good week, Winston Perez had his 11-game hitting streak snap yesterday. Kind of slowed down this week, but still, nevertheless, the bat was still out there. Grant Witherspoon, 6 for 21 with a double and 3 triples. Ben Malgeri, 4 doubles. All 4 of his 5 hits were doubles. Nice 385 batting average. Brett Hurdler continues to pitch well. 5 innings, 3 hits, 1 on 7 strikeouts. Wilmer Flores, I thought, had a good start too. 5 innings, 4 hits, 1 run on 3 strikeouts. And Ty Madden getting back in the swing of things a little bit. Somebody DM me about how, like, damn, dude, I didn't know his curveball was that good. Yes, it is. And so he had a good week. 5 innings, 3 hits, 1 run on 6 strikeouts. And as far as the bullpen goes, you know who had a good week?
Dario Gardea?
Yeah.
Billy Lester?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and Alex asked a question: who do you guys see getting promoted to AAA first, Dinkler or Perez? I think they're gonna. It depends on position needs. So I think if Malloy gets called up, it depends if Malloy gets called up or not. Because then what they could do is put, you could put or Andre Lipsius at third if you wanted to, and then Perez at second, and have Perez DH. But right now, I think because Toledo's got, they got 3. I think they got 3 catchers right now. I don't think they have Paparski, Knapp, and who else am I thinking of? Maybe they only have 2.
Donnie Sands.
Donnie Sands, thank you. Yeah, or Donnie Sands. So yeah, I think it would be Perez over Dinkler first. I mean, Dinkler right now is getting back in the swing of things a little bit, but Perez is. I think he was going to start the season in Toledo anyway before his injury. So.
Well, so a couple things. So Perez went. What did he? He had a decent week. What did he go? I'm looking 4 for 21, 4 walks. He had 5 steals this week. And this is 100% reckless speculation on my part, but I think his back is still bothering him. From watching him play, he's kind of like limping around when he was running, trying to beat out a double play. He was just not necessarily like, he stole 5 bases, so I don't think he's hurt, but I just feel like he's not 100% right because he's also not hitting for a ton of power lately. He wasn't ever a huge power guy until last year when he showed surprising pop. But it hasn't been there right now, and so I don't know. I mean, maybe that's just something he's going to have to deal with forever. And Dinkler, he came up with a couple big hits, but he kind of went right back to what we've seen. It's like the same old song. So he had that super hot week, and this week he's 4 for 19 with a homer, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. That's just what we've seen from him over the last couple of years. He goes on these strikeout binges, and it's I don't know. I think that's just always going to be part of his game. So we might not see either of them get called up to Toledo. Honestly, I think Roger's right. It's a matter of position, like if they need somebody up there. Because I think Scott Harris wants to develop that depth where if they had to grab a guy for the Tigers, they could grab him from Toledo or Erie. I think he wants that level of depth in the system. So, yeah, I don't think they're moving anytime soon. But if they do, I think Stan said, when is it traditional for players to move up from AA to AAA? It's usually most promotions happen around the middle of the season. It used to kind of coincide nicely with the draft, right? Where the draft would be in early June and they draft a handful of guys, and guys had done 2-3 months at one level and looked like they belonged in the next step and they would go up. Now it's really just kind of depends on needs. We saw last year, I remember they moved Parker Meadows up after like 2 hot weeks. It was really just 1 hot weekend, and they moved him up. It took him a while to get it going, but then other guys, they move up in August.
Yeah, we're like Wilmer Flores was moved after 17 innings of work.
Yeah, I mean he was dominant, and he was not being challenged. And there's a player in well, we can talk about that in the next team, but it's kind of a different story. But yeah, I know it was a fun week for Erie. They blew out Richmond in their first game, and then the next game was the 1-0 win, I think, where Dingler came up with a big RBI hit in the 8th inning. But something that Greg Gagne said on the broadcast, he said, strange things happen to Erie when they're in Richmond, and strange things happen to Richmond when they're in Erie. And it does seem to be true. You know, he would know better than anybody, right? He's been calling their games for a long time. So that third game, they went into the 9th inning. They were down, I think, 5-4, and it didn't look good. I think Dingler and Perez struck out very quickly, like 7 pitches total. And then Grant Witherspoon hit this harmless ground ball to first base, but Richmond's first baseman just completely booted it. It's like, whoops. And then there was a wild pitch, so Witherspoon got the second, and then Gage Workman hit a double to tie the game, and then Daniel Cabrera hit a single to walk him off. And it was kind of wild. And then that kicked off what ended up being a 5-game winning streak. That was really one of the better weeks of the season. And a lot of it, I think, and Raj, you touched on it, was their pitching finally started to look like what we expected it to this year, at least in terms of results.
Yeah. By the way, to answer Stan's question on YouTube, Cole Keefe this week did not have a good week. He went where am I at? 2 for 14, and he batted a nice robust 143. In terms of strikeout wise, he struck out 5 times into 2 walks. But no, you're getting back to the pitching. You're absolutely correct, Chris. The pitching this week turned back to form a little bit, which they definitely needed, because the bullpen, as we've talked about numerous times, has been absolutely waxed in terms of innings used, and they needed some really good starting pitchers or starting pitching performances rather. And Madden has, like I said, Madden's been hit and miss, but the last couple starts, I feel like he's getting back to what that first start was against Akron, where he just looked dominant. And the only one that has been consistent is Hurdler. Even I know that we're looking at Montero's numbers this week: 8 innings, 14 hits, 5 earned runs, but 12 strikeouts, 2 walks. And so to me, even take away, somebody mentioned this, there's a YouTube comment about some of the potential with Montero there. I think there's still a lot of potential there. And so you kind of ignore those numbers and go, all right, well, this is a guy who's only pitched 3 starts in Double-A, and he's still racking up the strikeouts. So that slider, I saw it was a pitch earlier in the week where he just had the sliders it was one pitch against the lefty, and it just disappeared off the face of the planet. And
his first start of the week, I think you clipped that one up on Tuesday, was his home debut, and it was really pretty good. And today he was good for a few innings, and then got hit pretty hard, or gave up some runs. And it's just, he's a guy, we've talked about it before, he's learning how to pitch, and sometimes he just finds way too much of the zone. Sometimes his breaking ball will just land right in the heart of the zone. Sometimes he'll throw a fastball right down the middle when guys are ready for it. And he just needs to fix his command slightly. And I think he's going to have some growing pains in Double-A this year, but I think he'll be fine down the road. There's still some reliever risk there. There's with a lot of these guys, it's something, their delivery isn't picture perfect, and he's not the biggest dude, but there's a lot to like there with Montero. And so he's been a good addition. But yeah, I mean, so Flores and Madden both had good starts.
Neither of them.
Yeah, Sawyer Gibson-Long with 5 innings and 2 earned runs. They're capping guys now at 5 innings. They were 4, now they're at 5. I don't know if they're going to let him go 6 next month or what, but so yeah, he's just turn along as an innings eater as much as you can be. But yeah, Flores he's pitching better, and he did, according to the broadcast, touch 97 the other day, which is something we haven't seen yet this year, really. But it's not as electric as he was last year at times, and so it's hard to figure out what's going on there. His delivery seems a little less in sync at times. He's spinning off even more. He was never a picture perfect finish or anything like that. But yeah, he's still a work in progress. Madden, like you said, Madden's getting better. We still haven't seen him get back to that just looked filthy in his first start, but he's been good, and he's showing flashes of a lot of good stuff So, I mean, this is kind of what we expected from these guys. That it was going to be a strong rotation, and they were going to help lead the to win or keep them in a lot of games. And this week, what happened was they just got contributions from just about everybody. We mentioned Colt Keith wasn't great, but you got up there. Grant Witherspoon had a good week.
Trey
Julio
Cruz
Rodriguez,
Trey Cruz was a really good week too.
yeah, he only had a couple hits, but he walked like 8 times, 7, 8 times, and so he was on base all the time. He did it home run, I think. So yeah, they just got not everybody hit. Like I think Jake Holton didn't do much of anything, and Workman didn't play a ton, but they got enough contributions from enough different guys that they were able to win 5 games. So it was big for them.
So we did get a question on Twitter: why is Workman playing sporadically? And the only thing we can tell you is that it's based off. They're just kind of scheduling it that way, and there's nothing more about it we can really talk about. But essentially, they're just trying to see what else everybody else can do. In other words, so without getting to it's yeah.
It's just there's a new GM in the Tiger system, a new president.
Bingo.
And so sometimes new presidents want to see things happen, and that's about as specific as we'll get right now. And I'm sure 6 months will tell you everything you need to know. But but yeah, so they're just it was a good week. I don't know who they play next. Have you?
They play Harrisburg. Yeah, it's right up there.
That's right.
I put it right there. It's always.
Listen, I can't read or look at things.
Oh,
I can't read.
Yeah, they're at Harrisburg next week. By the way, Toledo is going to be on the road again. They're going to be in Omaha next week, so they continue their
somewhere in Middle America.
Yeah, they're going to do the Heart of America tour in the middle of go to 2 of the most boring states in the union, perhaps. I mean, somebody out there is going to tell me that Nebraska's really cool, but I don't think so. Somebody's going to say maybe they will. I don't know, but
I hear there's good steak out there, right?
Is there?
I don't know. They always talk about Omaha steaks. I don't know.
Oh, is that this company where they mail steaks or whatever?
I assume they're based out of Omaha. Maybe not. Maybe it's one of those New York City salsa things. But
New York City. All right, we're getting way too sidetracked. Okay, let's get back in. That's our ADHD kicking in. And here, okay, so in terms of transactions this week, not much going on in West Michigan, but the Justice for All, Justyn Bibbie, 13 for 21, 2 home runs, 9 RBIs, and this guy will probably win the Midwest Player of the Week. Batted a cool 619, 680. Slugging percentage was ridiculous.
Yeah, I would be shocked if it's anybody other than Justice Bibbie. I honestly didn't look to see who else did anything, but you got 13 hits. You said 2 homers. It was also 4 doubles, was it?
Yeah, 4 doubles. Yeah.
Yeah, 4 doubles, 4 walks, 4 strikeouts. We saw him on Saturday night. He did hit a breaking ball about 400 feet to center field that was caught. But I've been watching him a little bit more closely. They drafted him as a first baseman out of, I want to say, Western Carolina or something like that. In the 19th round. Like a 19th rounder. And, he's a little bit older. He's 24, I think, in high A, so you don't make much of that. But he's really just been socking the ball in a lot of really hard contact to the opposite field. Today, his home run, I think, was left center. So he pulled it a little bit. But, yeah, he looks like a guy who doesn't belong at high A anymore. This is the kind of performance you see from guys when they're ready to move up. The problem is he's not a priority prospect, right? He was a 19th rounder. So it's not going to be a Parker Meadows situation where he had a hot week and they're going to send him up because they want to see what he has. And there's really not room in Erie right now. They were, dying for an outfielder earlier in the year. And then Ben Malgeri was the one who got called up. And so I don't know what they're going to do with Justice Bibbie. They might just let him, tucker himself out with all these hard hits and come back to earth. But he has, I don't see particularly like a future big leaguer there. But then again, I didn't really see that with Kerry Carpenter. And what he did was he kept hitting until you couldn't ignore him anymore. So it would be cool if Justice Bibbie got a chance to go up to AA and hit some more. And I honestly think he actually is a little bit more defensively versatile than Kerry Carpenter was, because he can play first base.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting if he got called up, but we'll see what happens. But I do think you're right. He's almost certainly going to be the Midwest League Hitter of the Week.
So I want to talk about yesterday what we've seen a little bit. There was a couple things that first and foremost, shout out to Tony Paul of the Detroit News. We had a chance to sit down and talk to him yesterday. It was the first time usually I see him in the press box, but we don't get a chance to talk, but it was good to talk to him. We're talking about prospects, and it was funny. He was there to interview Chase Young, and then he was like, I heard Roberto Campos is pretty shaky on the outfield. They're like, oh no, he's good. He's solid. And then he goes out there, and West Michigan, the two players collide at one point yesterday.
We should just talk about that game. In terms of, now we love going to any minor league game. It doesn't matter. We see people. It was great. What's up? Reds are promoting Matt McLean. Yeah, that's good news. He's been hitting the cover off the ball for them in Louisville, I think. But yeah, that was one of the worst kind of, in terms of getting good looks at guys or seeing stuff. One of the worst games I've been to for Whitecaps. They lost 6-0. It was defensively. It was like that Tigers game versus the Cardinals where they just decided to make 4 errors in one inning. Remember, it was. So yeah, we saw Tony Paul. It was nice to talk to him, and he's out there. I would expect to see some articles about West Michigan guys soon from him. So make sure you read those. And yeah, he was like, yeah, I heard that Campos is a butcher in the outfield, and I was like, no, he's been great. Like 2 innings, 3 misplays. It was, the first one was bizarre. It was like he could have caught a ball but ran like 20 feet in front of it.
I was just gonna ask, like, what was that? Yeah,
it was like he was sprinting to center field. We don't know if he lost it in the sun. It was just weird, and it's like he and they had Austin Murr playing center field, which is kind of unusual. Campos has been playing center field mostly,
right?
So, and it looks like those two have never talked to each other before, because there was another play where they literally ran into each other, and it was ugly. But it wasn't just him. We also talked about Isaac Pacheco, and Tony said he had heard that Pacheco is an awesome defender and is big league
Major League
now.
ready, yeah.
And what did he do with like his first 2 chances? Like, he booted him. He didn't have a couple nice plays later, but it was like, we've seen Pacheco play well. I like his defense. I wouldn't say it's major league ready yet, but and then we saw Josh Couch make a bad throw to second. They got center field, and it was just an ugly game all around. And it seemed like every time that Erie had or West Michigan had a chance to score, it was like, boom, double play, pop up, strikeout. Like it was an ugly game. Nobody did the most notable things we saw. I think Roberto Campos hit a fly out to center field, like a line drive about 402 feet. It was like right to the wall that Junior Perez caught. And then we saw Jace Young hit a really hard foul ball. I think
109. They hit that 109. We know that
109 miles per hour. Yes,
we're not gonna tell you how we know that, but we know that.
Yes, I raced against it and I beat it. That's how we know. I could run 110, and so it was very close.
No, but even Soretti, I thought that Soretti, there was a kind of a defensively. There was a couple notes I took. First and foremost, I took a lot of the pictures that I'll be posting because I had a nice camera. But Soretti, I usually try to zero in on 1 or 2 players that I have not really had a chance to zero in on. And Soretti, that was the first time I've seen Soretti live. So I wanted to, in terms of, I took some notes, and defensively, and Chris and I were talking about this during the game, that at some point maybe he'll move over to second. But overall, I thought he did a really good job of positioning, playing at short. His approach to the plate too. He had a hit, and I think it was in the 7th or 8th inning. But overall, I came away impressed with Danny Soretti as a guy who will probably continue to fly under the radar. I'm not sure what his ceiling is, but I'm a fan but I like his game a lot.
Yeah, and sure enough, today he gets a tailor-made double play ball hit right to him and boots it.
Yeah,
but this was actually one of his worst weeks, I think, as a hitter. I think he only had like 4 hits, and he actually had some rough swings. But for the most part, I keep comparing him to Andre Lipsius because it reminds me of that sort of. He's just a very competent infielder. And competent hitter. He puts the bat on the ball. He doesn't swing and miss much. He's kind of aggressive. He doesn't walk a ton, but he walks enough, I think. But he doesn't swing and miss hardly ever. And he hits a lot of like bloopers to, down the left field line or pulls it through the hole. between first base and second base. But yeah, normally he's sure-handed, makes quality plays. He and Young had an awesome double play today. I don't know if you saw that. I put it up. Young made a diving stop behind second base and flipped it.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah,
that was nice. I'm gonna put it. That's what I'm trying to pull up right now.
And then Soretti made a jump throw, and it was those. And we talked about like Jace Young. Jace Young had probably his best week as a pro, I would say. I haven't looked at week by week, but you see him 8 for 22. He had 7 walks to 2 strikeouts, hit a home run, and he is a quality defender without a ton of range. But he makes almost every play that he can get to, which is fine.
There is no, one of the things too that stood out to me. There was another one you caught too. The Carlos Mendoza play was really nice too.
Outfield. Yeah, that was the bases loaded, and he made a sliding catch, and then it's a sac fly, but they ended up getting out of that with only 1 run scoring, I think.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, yeah, Stan makes good points. It's tough to name only 5 Whitecap players when the team is doing so well, and they're rolling along. I think this is a Whitecaps team, comparatively speaking to last year, where you saw that the Whitecaps. Brian Pena did some sort of Santeria or something like that, because some of the magic he did pulled off last year with. They were losing guys left and right, and this time this is a team that's been together pretty much for the most part. But this is the play we're talking about. Who watch us on YouTube? Check this out. Boom! Just like even like the little toss, just like almost like like the way you threw that.
Yeah,
it was cool.
It was a really well done. Except sometimes you see some big league caliber double play there with bare hand, run, toss. Yeah. I mean, there were other, Isaac Pacheco had 4 hits this week. He had a home run, I think 2 doubles and a home run. He still doesn't look, quite as good as he looked at the end of last year. Campos, he's a funny player, man. He's just not what I expected, man. Like he hit 300 this week. Went 6 for 20. Didn't have much power this week, but like 3 walks and 2 strikeouts, or 2 walks and 3 strikes. Like he just makes way more contact than I expected, and a lot of it is hard. So, what do we have here? Is this the
Justin
just
double from earlier? Yeah.
And then he had a home run later. Justice Bigbie, and then we mentioned Campos, we mentioned Young, we mentioned most of the hitters. I do like that you picked up Jack O'Loughlin. He had one of the more bizarre lines you'll see. 2 starts, was it 10 innings, 10 hits, 0 runs.
Yeah,
I think today it was like 8 hits and 0 runs somehow in 5 innings. I don't know how he pulled that off, but it was. And they it's Jack O'Loughlin. They call him. O'Loughlin is easier for me to say, but and then Carlos Pena continues to pitch pretty well. We saw Garrett Burhan not look very good at all, but he was also not helped by that calamitous defensive inning, just ridiculous. But I've actually seen him live twice now, both times against Lansing, and both times it was kind of the same thing. It's just a sinker that doesn't really miss any bats, and his slider is okay, and normally his changeup is pretty good, but I don't think he threw many in this game. And then he was out after 3 innings, I think. They brought in Beanline, and then we got to see.
So Travis Fernandez, by the way, I want to mention that real quick, because we have a radar gun, right? And I wouldn't think twice of anything that I would have saw on the stadium gun, but on the stadium gun I had him 92, 93. But our gun had him at 95, 96. And yep. He had a slider yesterday. I mean, his slider has usually kind of been like, but it had a little more depth to it. It had a lot more bite yesterday. So I don't know. The increase in velocity has always been around 93, 94. But I did notice an increase in velocity with the slider. I was just like, holy shit.
Yeah, he had a really good inning. I think he was like clean inning, or did he pitch 2? I don't remember.
No, he had a clean inning, yeah.
There was a couple strikeouts in a row, and it was let's see why is Erie the only Tigers minor league team to provide game highlights to their YouTube homepage? I didn't know they did that. I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know. They don't promote it that much. Actually,
Jason doing that. I don't know if that's Sam doing that. I don't know if it's Greg doing that. I don't know who's.
I think it's Greg, and it's a combination of Greg and Sam. And as far as why, I can tell you this: simply put, lack of personnel. That's as simple as that. Like Toledo, usually from when I'm dealing with Toledo the last few years, they usually have some sort of intern from either Bowling Green or University of Toledo nearby, and they'll take care of all that stuff. They'll do all the social media and all that. But it really depends on what the team has in mind. Lakeland, I can tell you this right now, there's nobody down there. Literally, the staff is pretty much bare bones. And so, as far as West Michigan goes, I think there's a production team in place there too. So, but yeah, Ray, hopefully we're gonna be out there this week for Great Lakes, because I was just talking about this with Chris yesterday. I really like that field a lot. I don't know, that field to me, it's that when you look out from, so I was in the broadcast area last time. You look out that way and you see all the seating out there with the fire pits and everything. It looks really cool. And then the way they have the interior with where the vending is, or for the food places, it's just really cool, because like it's easily slip in and out of the rain and go in there, and really good seats overall. So hopefully we'll be out there. I'm hoping to be out there Wednesday, Thursday, maybe even Saturday, because I got some free time. So, and I hope we'll get to meet you, Ray. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, that's the reason why I stand. There's just lack of personnel, really. I mean, that's kind of why we do what we do, because people are looking for that kind of stuff, and we're trying to provide a service as much as possible, because there's a lot to cover. I mean, you know what's funny is there was a lot. I think there's a couple like the Boston Red Sox prospect sites, the unaffiliated ones. They have an era of gatekeeping to them. They're just like, oh, and they go, oh, we've been doing this for a while, and you guys are the new guys, or I don't know, like this weird. Maybe it's more in my head kind of thing. I don't know. Anyway, whatever. I got too sidetracked again.
Yeah. What? Anybody else?
Oh no! I wanted, so getting back to the bullpen, and that's what I wanted to go into too. It was as far as in terms of solid pitching performance. Again, West Michigan got some good pitching performances. That, again, even from a standpoint of their bullpen, which has been, I mean, Jack Anderson, who we've liked, he had a rough week, but as far as I'm trying to see if I can find it. Oh, here it is. Specifically, where is he? I lost him again. Gabe Sequeira, who we haven't talked about in a while, had a good week. And the other one was Aaron Haas, just a pair of, only pitching 1 inning, but did 2 innings, 3 strikeouts. And this was a little, like I said, it's a complete team effort that Stan alluded to earlier. Christian Totosa, again, 2 innings, just allowed one unearned run and 2 pair of strikeouts. But top down, outside of Garrett Burhan, it seems like Lakeland just pitched pretty good. Lakeland. West Michigan pitched good all week.
Yeah, and they've got some, I think, future big leaguers in the bullpen. Talking about Tyler Madison a little bit before, I think Trevin Michael has potential to make the big leagues too. We had, fortunately, Jerry was able to run all the numbers for Lakeland in StatCast, and some of these guys have some really interesting spin rates and things like that. So, yeah, I think with a little bit more seasoning, we might see some of these guys move up to Erie pretty soon to help in that bullpen. But yeah, it's a really good bullpen there in West Michigan. Not necessarily primetime names, but a lot of good arms with like Eric Canales, and you mentioned Haas and Anderson, and they just have a lot of different guys who could pitch out of that bullpen.
Yeah, and right now I'm interested in seeing how long they will keep this together. But I think out of all the teams that, in terms of pitching, that will quote unquote stay together, I think the West Michigan bullpen will more than likely stay. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and they may. I mean, right now Erie and West Michigan are both. It's early, right? But also not, because you got about a month, I think, left in the first half of the season. And you said Erie, I think, is a half game back, and West Michigan's like 1 game back, and they're going to play the team they're behind, Great Lakes. So they may keep these guys together just to, whoever wins the first half gets an automatic playoff berth at the end of the season. So if they make the playoffs, and then they'll move guys up. But they like players to be part of a real kind of pennant chase, where you're feeling you want the pressure and the excitement of actually winning games that matters to a certain extent, right? Because so much about the minor leagues is like development, or like you just see that, like you have a starting pitcher who's shoving and he's just out after 5 innings because that's the rules. That's just the way it is. And it's hard to feel like you're competing for real when that happens, right? It still feels kind of a little bit like an exhibition.
Yeah. And I like the way that so Stop It and YouTube says, I like all this info primarily because it keeps expectations in focus. I get tired of all the other sites comparing kids to Hall of Fame players, as doesn't do justice to the players or the fans. I would agree with you because I think it's ridiculous, because they always try to do like you have comps, and like one of the things that if the great James Chipman, who trained me in evaluating, he never liked the comps. He never liked it, and I don't like them either because I just, quite frankly, it's ridiculous. Why am I going to compare a pitcher to Clayton Kershaw as an example, like a lefty, because he throws a certain way? I don't know. I just think that I just feel like a jackass. I mean, flat out, I feel like a jackass because it's just like, here's what I see, and here's what I like, and here's what people are saying, and take either my opinion or you don't. Not necessarily opinion, but here's the facts, and here's what I see, and this is what I think. So, like, if, for example, with Andre Lipsius, because they promoted him so hard, and because what I saw, because his ability to be a solid defender, solid hitter, who do I comp him to? I don't know, Lenny Harris. I mean, like, I don't. I mean, like, I just don't understand why should that be necessary.
Yeah, it paints a picture for people sometimes where it's hard for maybe somebody to take in, like, okay, here are his 5 tools, and here's his plate discipline, and here's his body type, and there you go. I like good comps. I don't like bad comps. That's it's tough though. They're hard, and like I try to make, part of the problem is that, like, to make a proper comp, you usually have to make it to somebody who didn't do anything, right? Or was like just kind of hanging around for a little bit, because most of these guys aren't going to be like, you don't compare Colt Keith to like Chipper Jones, right? You're just like, no, he's not going to be a Hall of Fame switch hitting third baseman for 20 years. But there are certain things you can say, like his swing reminds me of this guy's swing, or he's got this kind of body type. And when I make a full comp, it's usually like Brant Herter. My comp to him is Brian Flynn, former Tigers pitcher who was traded to Florida and pitched in parts of like 4 or 5 big league seasons, but he didn't have a big league career. He was a leaguer, and I think that makes him a prospect. But people don't get excited about that. A lot of people probably don't even remember Brian Flynn. So, I mean, who was it? Somebody, I remember in one of the broadcasts this year was comparing. I think they were comparing him to Cliff Lee. Who was they? They were comparing somebody to Cliff Lee. It was a Miley. I was like, ooh, I don't know.
But to me, I think that, like, if you are a baseball fan and you're watching somebody pitch or hit, and you watch enough baseball, you can do your comp in your own head. Like, for example, when I did the Roberto Campos, when I was doing that story, I looked at his numbers, like, it sounded familiar to me. So I went back and saw that his numbers were very similar to Colt Keith at West Michigan last year. Doesn't mean he's Colt Keith. He's a completely different player. But even like just
that's like a statistical comp. Yeah.
The statistical comp, but just even like just this, like, you can say Brett Hiller reminds me of former Padre Yankee Sterling Hitchcock, because he's a lefty who, there's a lot of ways you can do it. But then again, I'm also making an obscure reference. And I just think fans and people who watch the game already in their mind will see what they see. So if they see somebody, they're like, oh, does that remind me of? Oh, it could be, for example, somebody who's grew up watching the Cincinnati Reds. Oh, that guy looks like Chris Sable to me, or Al Morris. I don't know.
Is it because he has goggles on? Is that why?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, we try not to make reckless comps. Like I said, I liked looking for them because it's kind of fun to find one that it's good, but it's most of the time they're not appropriate at all. So
yeah, it's not fair. It's not fair to the kid at all. So in terms of, there was a lot of injuries at Lakeland. Yeah, Lakeland. So I mean, we saw that in his last start, I think it was Chris Williams, who was on the IL to.
That's it. Joe's got it. Sorry.
Okay, Joey. All right. So Joey Wentz got compared to Cole Hamels and Cliff Lee.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Score.
it's, that's the thing. Like, if you say, okay, he's a big lefty, then sure.
Then he's
Sure, he
Randy
can-
John. Then he's Randy Johnson. Then
Well, everybody gets compared to Ray Johnson. For a while, every short guy got compared to Dustin Pedroia. It was like he was the weirdest thing. The more unique you were, the more other people would get compared to you. But
where's my Mike Hampton references?
Mike Hampton, yeah.
Yeah.
So
you, Chris, why don't you investigate that question and stop at asked? So in terms of Erie, Lakeland, so Zara Benitez, who's been the hottest hitter that Lakeland's had all season, hit the IL with, I believe it was a leg injury. And then we saw this week Sean Gunther, who the Tigers signed back in November, who had a cup of coffee with the Marlins back in 2021, coming back from surgery. He pitched a rehab. He pitched 2 innings this week. He pitched the opener yesterday. Gregory Jalilis on the 7-day IL. And in terms of numbers this week, Lakeland pitching actually was not that bad. I mean, it's just the last couple weeks, their staff's been really bad. But on the hitting side of things, they had no home runs at all. There was no home runs. They've only hit 4 in the last 2 weeks. And I know that the Florida State League it's a hard league to hit home runs, period. But there was nothing down in Bradenton whatsoever. And get back to what I was talking about, the pitching. Pitching wise, a lot better. Trey Melton out there, it's just a matter of time. I could see him in West Michigan probably by the middle of June when we were talking about the first half of the season gets over with, and Lakeland will be kind of screwed. Cole Patton pitched well. I think Cam Brown too, the Central Michigan grad, pitched as well. And MX9 in the YouTube chat, when you stink, they stop comparing you to people. Touche. Can't argue that. Touche. But overall, yeah, Lakeland pitched a lot better this week. And Stan asked a question about the typical week for a positional player and pitcher in the Florida Complex League. From what go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on if you're a domestic player or if you're an international player. And sometimes even the domestic, they will take English language classes, or some of the domestic guys will have a Spanish class. There's stuff going on down there that doesn't revolve around baseball every day. But yeah, for the most part, it's not a whole lot different than any other minor leaguer. You've got your days where you're lifting weights. You got your days where you're doing cardio. You got your days where you're in the field doing drills.
I was gonna say there is a lot of drills. I was gonna say.
And they do play a lot of games that just aren't, they don't keep box scores or whatever. They'll play scrimmages against other complex league teams. They'll play scrimmages against one another. So yeah, it's a lot of instruction and a lot of getting in shape mentally and physically.
And
that ball is gone. Touch 'em all time.
For Blood Right, thank you for the $5 on chipping into our chat on our super chat this evening. So yeah, and one of the things I did pick up on when I was down in Lakeland, Chris, when you talk about the complex league guys, so they have like when you walk in Lakeland, they have the fence, and you see the fields and all these fields back there, like the back fields, and then because the main field's to the left and then the back fields are on the right. There was probably 3 or 4 simulation games going on towards the end of when I was there, when the minor leaguers started coming into camp. So, but a lot of times you'll see the roving instructors out there too, like Artie Banger, who used to be the AA manager, was now the Greg told me this earlier, and I'm drawing a blank.
Roving outfield instructor.
Yeah, right? Roving, instructor. So, and it's funny. I think it was Artie. Was it Artie? No, never mind. I was thinking of. I'm trying to remember the player, or I was trying to remember the coach who noticed that I had a Lakeland or London Tigers hat on. And
was that at the barbecue, or was it the?
No, I was waiting to talk to Wilmer Flores, and I was sitting there with my Lakeland or my my London Tigers hat on, and all of a sudden this guy is like, they're walking by all the coaches and there's some players, and he says, "Hey, is that a London Flying Tiger or London Tigers hat on, or you hat?" And I said, "Yes." And he's like, "Oh, I played on that team." I'm like, "What's his name?" And I totally forgot his name.
I think that might be him. Yeah, I want to say, would that have been like 1990?
Yeah, when they won the Eastern League title, I think 92, 93, I want to say.
Yeah.
So maybe it was him. Now that I think about it. I'll
So-
look that up real quick. But we did get a couple questions too online, Chris. Did you see those questions we got earlier?
I missed them. Sorry, but I did want to mention, was it Stan who asked, or who was it asked about the oh, stop it. Asked him at a percentage. 19% is actually pretty close. I think it's usually about 20% of guys on a double A roster will make it to the big leagues, at least for a cup of coffee. So, you know, 1 out of every 5 you see. Doesn't mean, they just, sometimes it's 6 years later. Sometimes it's a guy who's already been in the big leagues is back, like Mark Leiter or something like that. But about 20% of the roster by the end of the year.
Oh wait, you know what's go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
No, sorry. You go.
No, you're good. I was looking at the questions. I was looking at the London Tigers roster from it was 1990 that they won the championship in, and former Yankee Chris Chamberlain was a manager. So it's just kind of strange to see that because I never associated him with the Tigers whatsoever. Or
he's the infamous walk-off home run where he's just bowling people over, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was the 1990 London Tigers, and I'm trying to look up the roster right now.
I think Baylor was on that team.
Yeah, I think you know what? It probably was him. If it was him, then I have to ask Greg. And
because I remember, I think this was something we were looking at when one of our trips to Erie last year, and we were looking at all the future big leaguers on. Like there were like 20 on that team. I thought, or was it maybe it was a different team that he was, or like. It was the 2010 team. I don't know. They had a team there at some point that had a lot of future big leaguers on it.
So that 90 team. So it was already okay. So it was already then, yeah, because So that team had. Wow, this is a list of whose name. So this is the names of names, if you will. So this. Let me see if I can. I'm going to share it because. Oh wow, that's cool. They have the. You can also check out the various Tigers teams they had, but yeah, I'll have to say something to Greg next time I see him then, because he pointed out my hat there. Okay, so that's Ken Williams, but I just wanted to show, look at this cool logo. The Estonian Tigers, the original Lakeland Tigers, the Fayette Generals, Glen Falls, Bristol, all cracked out Tigers, that cracked out Tiger look. So, but let me pull up that team here real quick, that 1990 team. So Artie was on that team. You had Rico Brogna. You had David Haas. Oh, I don't know. That's a name. That was a Tiger prospect everybody was talking about. Rusty Meacham. Kurt Knudsen. Another name I remember. Kurt Knudsen. There was Steve Pegasus, who never really amounted to much, but there was some hype behind him too. So anyways, a who's who of like Tiger prospects that never did anything. I'm not trying to sound mean when I say that, but it's true. They didn't. So, but Rico Brogna, of course, more known to be a Philly than a Tiger, really. But I remember the hype behind him as well. So that's your flashback from obscure. We maybe lost 10% of our audience on that one. But all right, Chris, we had the question. Somebody did ask us about Roberto Campos in the outfield.
Did we have a question? Where was that?
On Twitter.
I'm looking. I don't see it. Oh, wait, there. I know you guys touched on this some last week, but do you think Campos can take it in the field defensively? Nick Spillane.
Yes, it was.
I think he'll play center field throughout the minor leagues, and if he makes the majors, I think he may be able to fill in occasionally at center field. But I do think his best position is probably going to end up in right field. He's not a plus runner. That's the main thing. Like he's an average runner, home to first, and above average underway, and he's still only 19. I don't know how much bigger he's going to get. He's a big kid already, but it's a big athletic build. It's not like he's going to add a ton of weight, but he probably will lose a step or half a step. So I don't know. I don't project him to play a ton of center field at the big league level, but
David, that's a really good observation. That's exactly what happened yesterday. I mean, he jumped out a little bit and read that wrong completely. So that David, I like what David in YouTube said. Campos seems like he has good range, but he has a bad first read. And I think it's also, it depends too, because on center field, sometimes he gets a better jump than I do. I've seen a better jump from him in center field than I do in right field. That's just me though.
No, absolutely. And you see the same thing from Riley Green. And for Parker Meadows, the angles are completely different in the corners. It's a lot harder than people realized to go from playing center to go from to playing a corner. The guys who can do it seamlessly are really talented, and I think a lot of that is just reps, right?
Right.
You learn the way the ball looks coming off the bat, the way it's going to spin, how it's going to react. Yeah, like earlier last week, I saw Parker Meadows misplay a couple balls in right field because he's not used to playing a ton of right field. I mean, he has throughout the minors, but he's so used to playing center field. And we saw Riley Green in spring training, right? I think he played a little bit of left. It was like, that doesn't look good. So it happens. But yeah, I mean, I think I still remain impressed with Campos' defense overall. I would never call him a butcher. I don't know who did that, but he's. I think I don't know if he's ever going to be like a plus defender, but I think he'll be a fine defender, and his bat is just really impressive. So, yeah, that was that, Nick. Let's see. I'm trying to look at. So somebody had some fun with your. Did you see that?
What?
Tyler Cool had some fun with your Justice Bigbie.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Named a whole bunch of different songs. That's fun.
Yeah.
Let's see. We got Deadly Ninja Bee said, given the state of the pitching prospect, how many pitchers should we expect to take in the draft? They went pitching heavy last year after, what was it? Once like the 9th round came around.
Yeah, there was pretty much they went all pitchers
except for Dom Johnson.
Yeah,
Dom Johnson. So, but yeah, I would expect I don't know, 3 of their first 6 picks to be pitchers at least. They we didn't say it specifically, but the Lakeland roster this year is just bad. It's not a lot of talent there. Not playing terribly well because there's not much there. It's a bummer because those guys have to come up eventually, or they need to bring in all sorts of new players. But
yeah,
it's been unfortunate. Santana was playing really poorly, then got hurt. Peyton Graham has not done much. Luke Gold has not done much. So,
and there's
some of the guys we're hoping for.
Yeah, there's nobody in the complex league that's going to come over and help out right now either, and that's why you and I were talking about when to go down to Lakeland. I'm not till that after the draft, which is what it's funny that Sergio brings up. Looking forward to what the pick will be at 3. And by the way, our draft coverage will probably kick up this week, so expect some draft art. Like there's going to be a lot more draft coverage. I'm running up a mock draft for Fansided, and I'm going to do some stuff for the site. So I'm going to be helping out Chris, and we're going to be immersed in the draft. And then by the time the draft comes, the next day after the draft, we're going to forget all about it because that's what happens to us every year. And but David Means also brings up another interesting point too about the West Michigan outfielders versus Junior Perez in Lansing. And he did like Perez on that first hit, that first ball stroke by Campos. Yeah, he tracked that. He had a really good eye on that, and even the timing of the jump on that was really well done.
Yeah, and he may just be more natural. He's the guy who only hits against West Michigan for some reason.
Yeah. 1 for 44. Was it 1 for 44 against the lead or something like that?
He was like 9 for 27 against West Michigan with 4 home runs, and 1 for 42 against everybody else. He was one of the most absurd splits I've ever seen. It's the reverse Isaac Pacheco, who has all 4 of his home runs against Lansing. Yeah, I mean, I think that's it for the questions. We had somebody else was kind of they were having a discussion under a highlight from Justyn-Henry Malloy about like call him up, and he said, real question, who was the last prospect Detroit had who had a high OPS all the way up the ladder, then improved at AAA? So remember, Atlanta developed this kid until this year. They have a real solid, if not spectacular, track record of slugging prospects, hitting MLB ground running. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think Kerry Carpenter actually had a better OPS in Toledo than he did in Erie last year. I think briefly. I think Ryan Kryler did too in 2021. But who are we looking at here? We're looking at Langford.
Yeah, a lot of people think he's going to go to number 3 to Detroit. And
yeah, I really like Langford's swing. I was listening to a podcast. It was interesting. I was listening to a D1 baseball podcast on the way to West Michigan on Saturday. We drove separately for I think maybe the first time ever.
Yeah, it was weird. I didn't like it.
I didn't like it either, and we did it to like save. I don't know why we did it, but it ended up you got there before me, and I was like, oh well, all right. But in any event, they were talking about Dylan Cruz. Dylan Cruz has been he's the 1-1 pick, basically. Everybody says that he's been crushing baseball, but they said that he's got a ground ball rate north of 50% this year, and like an extremely high batting average on those ground balls, like way too high. Whereas Langford, his ground ball rate is like 25%. He's hitting almost everything in the air and hitting it hard. And I like his swing more than Dylan Cruz. I don't know if I would take him first ahead of Cruz now, just because Cruz has been destroying the SEC. But it's not like Langford's not playing well. I think he has more home runs than Cruz. He's just not hitting, 480. He's hitting 400. Tough break. Yeah, I mean, it's a great year to have a top 3 pick. It's Paul Skeens. It looks like a generational pitcher, they're saying. He's doing stuff that they haven't really seen from, like, this is Steven Strasburg level stuff. But he's probably not going to be the first pick. He might go second. If he doesn't go second and it goes Cruz Langford, that's going to be where it gets really interesting. Do the Tigers feel secure taking a pitcher at all in the top 3, or would they go Walker Jenkins, who I've heard that they really like? And he's a guy that some people think he might go second overall. The high school outfielder from North Carolina who's got hitting power, and they're saying he's playing a better center field this spring. Kind of reminds me of Riley Green. So, yeah, it's a great year to have a top 5 pick.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad the hype's kind of going away from Max Clark a little bit, because I think Max Clark's going to be a good talent. But I just think it's going to take. He's going to if Tiger fans want somebody right away, it's not Max Clark. I think Max Clark will eventually be effective, but I just don't think he's going to be, in other words, I think Max Clark's going to be a fine major leaguer, but it's just going to take some time versus somebody like, to be honest, I haven't really checked out Jenkins, but I mean, in terms of Wyatt, Langford, out in just his overall skill set, if the Tigers are somebody who's going to be really coming up really quickly, would be him. But what was it? Is it Paul? You said Paul Skeens, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's LSU. Does LSU still have that reputation, Chris, of overburdening their pitchers?
No, not necessarily. I mean, he's pitching. Most college programs don't do that anymore, where they pitch a guy like 130 pitches or whatever. They've been giving him 6-7 innings just about every start, as long as there's not weather. I don't think they're taxing him more than any other college program at this point. It used to be what Rice was the number one. Rice would just burn through every arm they had. There is kind of a problem for LSU. LSU's got an elite offense, but they don't really have a great pitching staff this year. So they might have the first and second picks in the draft, but they might not even get to Omaha, honestly, because pitching staff is a little bit iffy. So that'll be something interesting to follow. It's one of the fun things about, so there's basically 2 months till the draft. We got about 1 month left in college baseball. We're like the final week or 2 of the regular season, and then you got tournaments, and then you've got Omaha. And this is when some guys just step up, right? This is when the Alex Fido time. Where in the past, though, you get drafted, and then they'd step up, and people go, "Oh man, I wish we'd have, drafted that guy before." But now you can see it all. So that's like Kate Horton last year from Oklahoma went off down the stretch. Ended up was he a top 10 pick? I think the Cubs took him 9th or 10th, I think. And so somebody's going to do that this year. Somebody's going to go off and jump up the board. I don't think into the top 5, but at least it'll be fun watching. And we're gonna be paying a lot more attention and writing more about it soon.
Yeah. So draft show, by the way, we'll be streaming the whole draft, the whole entire first round on the minor league website, or on our YouTube page, Sunday, July 9th. So mark your calendars down. I've already done 3 posters about it. I'm actually going to do a commercial for it, because it's the 6th year we've done this, the 6th annual Tigers draft show. And we're going to be live from Chris's house this year, back to where we're more familiar with the big splash. So if there's a big splash pick that unexpected, I'll be jumping into a pool belly first, because I'm a sadist apparently. But no, there's one guy that fits that description, by the way, that I can see happening is a Hertzen
Waldrop.
Yeah,
exactly. He has got he's got absolutely diabolical stuff. It's
he's got a splitter, doesn't he?
He got a splitter. He's got 2 nasty breaking balls. He's got a fastball. It's like sits 97 up to 100. But it's like a pure reliever delivery. And he's got a terrible ERA this year. It's like a 5.5 ERA. And so it's like, what the hell's going on there? But he's a guy that I could see a pro organization taking him, fixing him in like 3 weeks or a month, and him getting to the big leagues almost immediately. Or he's a guy that maybe he's the next. Who's the dude the White Sox took? Carson Fulmer.
Carson Fulmer, yeah.
Carson Fulmer. They took him, and he was ended up with the Tigers. He could just never throw enough strikes. So, but yeah, it's
top. That's over the top. Like, you don't see that very often.
It's filthy stuff. It's really nasty, but not enough consistent strikes, and he's getting hit way too hard. One thing they were saying on that podcast is that he might just be way too predictable. Like, he's throwing fastballs at fastball counts and breaking balls at breaking ball counts, and everybody just knows what's coming.
Yeah, because he transferred from a smaller school, right?
I think Southern Miss, I believe.
Yeah.
I think he and Chase Dollander with Southern Miss. Dollander is another guy who, he was a guy who was talked about going in the top 3 at the very beginning of the year, and he got passed by Skeens pretty quickly, and he hasn't been terribly good. But let's say Tennessee goes on a run, and he's out there looking like he did last year. He's a guy who creep back up into the top 5 because people really liked him heading into this year.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy right here that they could tweak something and just go on a roll for Florida. So we'll see what happens. I mean, you're right though. I always forget that aspect of the College World Series where you see some guys just that were kind of like, floating by, and then all of a sudden come out of nowhere and become the next big to get the draft pushed into the top 10, top 5 picks. So, but yeah, there's plenty of time. We're gonna be, like I said, we're gonna be hitting the draft pretty hard here the next couple of weeks or so. So every show, actually, you know what? I've just declared that every show we're gonna be talking about the draft at least the last 10 minutes of the show.
All right. Well, you know what? I will start doing some articles. Maybe we do it position by position.
Yes.
Just to take a look at it, because that'll help us get an idea about some guys who the Tigers might take with their 2nd and 3rd pick, which are still top 50 picks. So, yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, and this will be the first time that this draft will not be predictable. Like I said, this is a Mark Connor draft, so this is going to be a completely different draft profile. And what I'm going to like about this is that it's going to be guys that, like, for example, that fit almost like, I don't want to say Colt Keith status, because Colt Keith was, when the Tigers drafted Colt Keith, it was different than when they normally do. So that's why I said that, because at the time it was, the Tigers have had a type, but this time there's not really a type that you can pin with. So
they rarely went after high upside high school players later, like after the first couple rounds. They tried it in 2007. What was the year they got Casey Crosby and Daniel Fields and
2013?
But it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
It was and it didn't work out.
2009. I want to say 2008, 2009, something right now.
It was one of those years, and then they went right back to taking college relievers. But I mean, I think, not to get too deep into it, but I could see a situation where Langford is available and they go Walker Jenkins, people lose their mind. But I think that it could just be that they like his hit tool more, right? Or they like his hit power combination more, or they think they're the same and think he's got a better chance to play plus defense. We'll see. I'll be surprised. We think there's a pretty clear top 3, but time will tell.
I mean, there's not going to be a situation. I think this time around, there's not going to be a situation where they're going to pick a high school pitcher out of, I don't know, Oklahoma, out of nowhere or anything. And, it's
there are a couple. So Noble Meyer looks like a spectacular high school pitcher who may go top 10, depending. Some teams just won't do it at all. Thomas White is a lefty who's throwing upper 90s with some good stuff. So those are options. I don't think they're going to go that route, but like people go, just take the guy who's going to get here quicker, right? You take Langford, and you just can't do that. You got to take the guy who you like more, because the comparison I always make is the Marlins took JJ Bleday 4th, the Tigers took Riley Green 5th. Who do you think's happier? The Marlins already traded Bleday for AJ Puck, didn't they? Like, he was supposed to be the advanced college bat, and he struggled. Riley Green shot through the minors, got to the big leagues before JJ Bleday. You just got to take the guy you like more. So,
yeah, it's gonna be, like I said, it's gonna be fun. I think this year is gonna be a situation somebody mentioned Joe Hunter, maybe another Henry Davis situation.
Well, so there's another thing we can get into briefly.
Yeah.
They've expanded the bonus pools. So Pittsburgh's slot for the first overall pick, I think, is $9.7 million. And I think the largest bonus ever is still Torkelson at 8.4, or at least the largest bonus in the slot era. So if Pittsburgh took Henry Davis, they liked him, but they were able to get like a $4 million or $3.5 million haircut. I think something like they saved a ton of money, and that allowed them to go get was it Bubba Chandler, Anthony Solometo, and Lonnie Hughes Jr. or somebody, I forgot his name, but some higher upside guys. They really kind of spread it out. A lot of people don't think they should mess around with Dylan Cruz this year and do that. Now, but like I said, I don't think they'll have to spend all of their top pick on Dylan Cruz. They can get him the largest bonus ever, at least the modern era, and still save like $100,000 or $1 million to $500,000 to use on other guys. So I don't think they're going to mess around too much. The one situation I could see is if they have Cruz and Langford basically similar, to take whoever takes less money. But I really think they're just going to go Cruz. But it's part of what makes it intriguing.
By the way, Henry Davis is a red ass. Watching him in Erie, just it's like he is. Talk about a gamer. I mean, like this guy, I think he doesn't wear batting gloves. A, I don't think he wore batting gloves. And B, he hit the ball really hard. He impressed me when we saw him out there.
He's got like Spencer Strider legs too. It's his muscles are busting through his pants. He's a muscular dude. So and he's tearing up AA right now.
Yeah, I mean he looks like a halfback out there. I'm dead serious.
Yeah.
Like he's like just
it's like Saquon Barkley legs.
Yeah, dumb. Yeah, that's a good way. Yeah, put it there. So, but at any rate, thank you so much for listening to the Minor League Report podcast. So tomorrow in the morning, sometime before 11, I almost got the recap almost done. You'll find the latest recap. We're gonna have a StatCast article behind our Patreon. So Patreon.com/Tiger Minor Report if you want access to it. I'm also gonna do something so we're finishing up the scouting reports for our updated top 25. I'm going to, I think for the scouting reports, we're going to open those up so everybody can take a look at those. So that will be probably unlocked tomorrow. I was trying to put them on the Patreon. Like I said, we're going to put some more different stuff on the Patreon. And also, Jerry's going to have another article this week coming out. So Jerry's been, shout out to Jerry, by the way. Jerry's just, we got to have him back on the podcast soon. It's not that I don't forget to ask him. I think he's just, I always think he's busy. I mean, he had Mother's Day today. He's got a wife and kids and all that stuff. So I gotta, But go to our website, TigerMLReport.com for the recap and our podcast. We appreciate everybody checking us out tonight. We'll be back next Sunday, same bat time, same bat channel at 9:00. And Motor City Metrics will be back on Thursday to recap the Pirate series. And if there's anything that happens tomorrow, the Tigers have an off day tomorrow, and I guarantee you there will be some sort of movement. To what extent, I don't know. But I'll be down there for the series. And Chris, anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
No, baseball. It's fun.
I want to apologize. I want to apologize to Stan.
Yeah, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, I want to apologize. Do that. I want to apologize to Stan too. I was gonna show up, like I said, just some circumstances beyond my control were there, but I will be down at the ballpark a little more. So I apologize. I wanted to meet up with Stan really bad too because I always like meeting with people, talking baseball and talking shop. It's funny. Nick met Nick Splain opening day, and we had a beer together. It was funny. He's like, "You want a beer?" And it's like, oh, I did this so cold, almost like.
That's so bad. Yeah, the one time we had him on the podcast, and both of us missed it, right?
Yeah. So
I felt bad.
Yeah.
I'm checking. Okay, so Tuesday's game for the Whitecaps is at 11 a.m. That might be interesting.
Yeah, well,
I'm looking. I was just thinking, like, this Thursday the Tigers don't play, but they play at 6. Maybe Thursday, but then we have our show. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. Until then, have a good week, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.